be LGB is declaring independence, because being a feminine man doesn't make you a female.
We're declaring LGB independence because we've had enough of pronouns.
And haven't we all had enough of pronouns? You're listening to Filtered. My name is Phil Dye, and this episode is all about divorce. A nasty thing, but probably in the bigger picture, this divorce is a good thing. It's about the divorce of the lesbian, gay and bi community, the LGB community, from the rest of the Rainbow Alliance, which is the TQA, the transgender, queer and agenda, and all of the other letters that may be appearing. Now, I'm pretty straighty 180 and not privy to the discussions that happens in gay groups, so I thought I'd let a gay man explain it.
The LGB community needs a divorce from the TQ+. Not a separation, not a break, a full-blown, court-stamped, assets divided, move out by Friday, divorce. Because we need to make something very, very clear here. LGB, that's just sexual preference. Yeah, me as a guy, I just like other guys. That's it. Not a pronoun party, not a gender celebration. Just good old-fashioned same-sex attraction. That's it. Now the TQ+, oh, that's not a sexual preference. No. I'm sorry, but when did being gay turn into navigating someone else's delusions? Yeah, I didn't sign up for that shit. Used to fight for acceptance, now we're being guilt-tripped into co-signing on someone's fantasy. I don't think so. Let me tell you something. I didn't come out of the closet just to be shoved in another one. I know the difference between a man and a woman. So yes, the LGB wants a divorce stat. We are filing for custody, for common sense, and a permanent restraining order against the woke mob. I'm just saying what's on everybody else's mind, and it's been long overdue.
Pretty clear, isn't it? That was Rigo Starr with 2 R's on the end. You can find him on Instagram. So this divorce has been in the pipeline for the last 10 years, but it's only now starting to come to its pointy end. I interviewed Nicole Phillips from the LGB Alliance here in Australia back in November 25, but I've left this episode until now because it will go live between Midsummer Madness in Victoria, which is the LGBTQA event, goes over a couple of weeks, and Mardi Gras in Sydney. Now, Jacinta Allen in Victoria is the Premier. She attends Midsummer Madness, and she's there waving the flag for the TQA community, where she could be helping deliver hay to the fire-affected farms in Victoria. The event in New South Wales, Mardi Gras, is going ahead, although it has been diluted because they can't get the funding. That's right, businesses are finally seeing that the Australian public are sick of having the rainbow flag waved in their face every minute of the day. So the after party, that was always a big event for Mardi Gras, has been cancelled because they can't get sponsorships. This divorce is a good thing. Most divorces are a bad thing. They're tragic. This divorce is not tragic. It actually marks a turning point for culture in Australia. Most Australians are accepting of difference. We don't care how people dress. We don't care what they want to look like and what they do in the privacy of their own homes or in their select groups. But we do care when kids at school are being indoctrinated about TQA ideology. We do care when men are playing in women's and girls' sports. We do care when men who are pretending to be women are using women's and girls' facilities. And we do care when children are being fed puberty blockers and hormones by so-called doctors, where their bodies will be damaged for the rest of their lives. It's not the transvestite community that are the problem, the people who just want to dress up and be in their own environment and they don't intrude on the rights of others. It's the extreme transgender mob who are the real issue. They are a poison in Australian society, and they are being hoisted by government entities from the Labor Party and from the Greens. Even the Liberals haven't come out against this ideology. I think One Nation has, a couple of the independents have. It's as if these politicians have shares in the big pharmaceutical companies making puberty blockers and hormones, and their superannuation depends on it. The quicker this divorce is announced loudly to politicians, to the media, to the general public, the better it will be. And what better way than to have a massive protest march of LGB people in Sydney, in Melbourne, in Adelaide, through all the capital cities, declaring that this divorce is final. I'll be saying more about that towards the end. As mentioned earlier, I interviewed Nicole Phillips from the LGB Alliance in Australia, and I asked her to explain how she became first interested in this important divorce.
I'm one of the founding members of LGB Alliance in Australia. When I came out 40 years ago, it was just the gay and lesbian community. There were none of these extra letters attached to us. And we were a grassroots movement fighting for gay and lesbian liberation, basically. Bisexual people came and went from the lesbian community and the gay community. But, the men respected lesbians' needs for our space, and we respected their needs for their space. And we happily came together in mixed sex space at things, like Mardi Gras and Midsummer and those kind of things. So I've seen a huge, huge, huge change in the 40 years that I've been out.
And generally, though, over the years, did LGB achieve their aims of equality and recognition?
Look, I think so in terms of the same-sex marriage stuff, but there's still a whole lot of homophobia out there, and a lot of the homophobia is coming from TIQ+.
Right, so the animosity is coming from the trans and queer side of the Rainbow Alliance. In my discussions with just members of the public recently, it seems that no one really cares about LGB. No one seems to worry about it too much. But you've recently separated from all of the legacy groups like ACON. Tell me why you have decided to do that.
I've divorced myself from the legacy groups probably 5 or 6 years ago when I started realising what was going on. Basically, there's been no negotiation or consent around all these other letters in the alphabet joining our movement. It's been forced upon us, and it's gone from, as I said earlier, a grassroots liberation movement to this corporate behemoth with huge amounts of money behind it. And the legacy LGBTIQ plus organisations are basically a funnel to the gender industry. So they know that the LGB are traditionally, gender non-conforming. That's just how it is. We know that gender non-conforming kids usually, but not always, grow up to be LGB. And that happened in my case. I was a tomboy. I grew up to be a butch lesbian. So they're using LGB to recruit gender-confused kids.
So in some ways, could you say, Nicole, that they're using the goodwill that you have built up for the LGB community over the years, over the past 20, 30, 40 years, they're using that goodwill to now indoctrinate children and the public into acceptance of transgender ideology?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's basically a funnel to the gender clinic. So whereas the gay men had their community, the lesbians had our community, and I, as a young lesbian, I realise now, I didn't so much at the time, how vitally important it was to have that community to come out to, because the older lesbians mentor the younger lesbians coming out to how to sort of live in the world. Option is LGBTIQ plus organisations, where
and it's the
everything
safety
is mixed
issue of
sex
joining
space,
together
compulsory
too,
mixed
isn't it,
sex
in that
space.
one single group?
And it's
Absolutely.
the funnel
And
to
so
the
I
gender
realise
clinic. Now, as an older lesbian, how vitally important it was for me to have that safe community to kind of embrace me and show me the way as to how to live, outside of the norm, basically, because, we are outside of the norm.
So how is it different today for a young woman who's coming out as a lesbian?
Lesbians have been underground for the past 20 years. Our community has had to go underground in order to keep males out.
And this is males pretending to be a woman?
Oh, absolutely. And it's not that we hate males, it's just that we want to be afforded the right to have our own space.
And that's impossible now?
If you're a young lesbian coming out today, your only option is LGBTIQ plus organisations. If you're a young lesbian coming out today, your only option is LGBTIQ plus organisations. And it's the funnel to the gender clinic. Compulsory mixed
So
sex
these men
space.
who are pretending to be women
to the
or
gender
identifying
clinic.
as women, they go along to the lesbian event and then they try and hook up with women. It seems one of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard because they're simply men trying to hook up with women.
Yes. So these men who believe they're women, again, there's been no negotiation nor consent given that they have access to our spaces.
But these ridiculous self-ID laws means you have to let them in. And women who don't want to hook up with the men, well, obviously they don't because they're at a lesbian-only event, they'll be labelled as transphobic or homophobic. For heterosexuals listening, this will be doing their head in, like it's doing mine in. So these young women who come out as lesbians now are expected to date men who believe they're women. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
It's just insane. No wonder the LGB want to divorce themselves from the Rainbow Alliance. Now, listeners will be saying, oh no, this is only in Melbourne. Surely Melbourne's the hub of all this stuff.
No, I think it's a countrywide phenomenon. It's a worldwide problem for lesbians. I think that we are certainly policed more heavily here in Victoria with the laws that we've got, but it is certainly a worldwide issue.
Now, Nicole, we talked about women's spaces, lesbian spaces, but what about gay men's spaces?
And it's an issue for gay men too. There are females out there who identify as being gay men, and I've seen some hideously homophobic propaganda coming out of legacy LGBTIQ plus organisations, leaflets on how gay men can give oral sex to trans men, i.e. females.
Gee, that'd be an interesting leaflet to get in the letterbox. What about then the Australian LGB community's relation or alliance with ACON?
We've basically broken away from the legacy LGBTIQ plus organisations because they no longer represent us. In fact, they're working against us.
Yes, and here's that Australian voice again backing that up.
The LGB is declaring independence because being a feminine man doesn't make you a female.
Yes, we've known that for thousands and thousands of years, but now these legacy groups like ACON want feminine boys to take puberty blockers and hormones and surgery. And if ACON is listening, this next comment is for you.
Because wealthy legacy LGBTQ plus organizations have betrayed the same-sex attracted population.
When you put all your efforts into supporting a delusion from the minority, you will lose the support of the majority. So LGB Alliance Australia has now joined with 17 other international groups from Spain, from the UK, from the USA, have withdrawn completely from these older groups like ACON. Has there been any pushback from them?
So the legacy LGBTIQ plus organisations have branded us a hate group. We're not a hate group. We're standing up for our rights as same-sex attracted people, and I put the emphasis on sex because we're homosexuals or bisexuals. We're same-sex attracted. We're not attracted to a gender.
Yes, so what the legacy groups are really saying is that if you've just got to be attracted to someone who dresses up. According to these groups, biology's got nothing to do with it.
No, that's right. No, well, in fact, it's all about biology because we are biologically attracted to members of the same sex.
Yes, these groups conflate sex and gender the whole time, don't they?
Oh, absolutely. And they're hiding behind us. That makes sense. They're like the cuckoo in the nest. They need us in order to survive.
So they need you in two ways. They need you in a public perception sense because the LGB gives some credibility to the whole Rainbow Alliance, but they also need you as the trans mob in an event, say, will get to a gay or lesbian person and to talk to them and convince them that they might be trans. and then send them down that trans pipeline. For a young person, it'll mean puberty blockers and hormones, and for an older person, it'll mean hormones and mutilating surgery.
They're recruiting from us in terms of gender nonconformity. But this whole movement now medicalises that, and it's completely unnecessary. It's destructive.
Where does this leave organisations like the ABC, AGL Energy, Coles and the Macquarie Group, who have used ACON and these legacy groups as sort of a plug-in? They're a diversity plug-in to sort of tick the diversity box. I'll get ACON in to do this with my staff. But suddenly, LGB is no longer supporting them. Where do you think that leaves groups like the ABC?
Well, I think the ABC, as I said previously, is basically a propaganda mouthpiece for ACON. ACON have basically bought them with their Workplace Equality Index. But again, the whole Workplace Equality Index is basically buying.
Yeah, for listeners, organisations like Coles, like the ABC Macquarie Group, pay to be principal partners of ACON of up to $10,000 a year. I think it's a little bit more now. They can get ACON points for employing a number of diverse people, a couple of transgender people. And for the ABC, they do programming that are supporting transgender ideals. For example, ABC Queer. So what might happen, Nicole, is that some of these groups like Coles or the Macquarie Group could well pull out of ACON.
Yes. And in fact, Stonewall in the UK had a similar program, the Stonewall Diversity Champions, I think, and the BBC were signed up to that, but they've pulled out. Yes,
the BBC and Channel 4, I believe, have recently pulled out as well.
Right.
Because it wasn't only the possibility of bias, but it was seen to be biased.
Okay.
By the public.
And it is biased.
Will you be letting the government know? We can say it in podcasts, it can be on the news, but the government needs to have some formal correspondence.
We work with politicians. We are bipartisan. Most of us come from the left. It's the right that are happy to work with us and not the left, which I think speaks volumes, actually.
Now, if there's any gay, lesbian, bi people listening and they want to join up with you and they've had enough of this whole ACON business of flogging the gender barrow, they can join you, can they?
Yes, absolutely. From our website, lgballiance.org.au.
Or if they just Googled LGB Alliance Australia, I guess they'd get there too.
They'll get there too, that's right. Yeah.
Any final comments, Nicole?
There are a number of trans out there that are supportive of sex-based rights. I guess you'd call them the old school transsexuals rather than this transgender where you can identify as whatever you want. And we do have a number of trans supporters, which is fabulous. You know, we're not out there to hate trans people. We're there to stand up for our own rights as same-sex attracted people and as people who know that biology exists.
So you're not anti-trans, you're simply in favour of single-sex events and spaces and in favour of biology.
May the trans people have their own events and their own spaces and have a fabulous time. We would just like to be afforded the same right.
We are declaring our independence because we're tired of people who aren't lesbian, gay or bisexual speaking for us in our name.
And there you have it. In the words of Rigo Starr,
mob. I'm just saying what's on everybody else's mind, and it's been long overdue.
It has indeed. And I would ask the LGB community, what really have you got to gain by staying with the TQA mob? Not very much at all. You've got a lot to gain by the divorce going through completely, because you will regain a lot of the public support that you started to get before the TQA took over. So you will regain quite a bit of credibility, I think, in the public's mind, in the Australian public's mind, especially if during the public announcement you come out with support for single-sex spaces, support for women's sports and biological men not playing in women's sports. If you come out against puberty blockers and hormones for under 18-year-old kids, you will gain so much support from the public. Everything that you have lost will be rebuilt. And at the same time, you've got absolutely nothing to lose. Absolutely nothing to lose by going through with this divorce. Now, I mentioned before that this divorce has to be made very, very public to politicians, to the media, to the public. And one way of making this big announcement would be to hold an event. You could call it a divorce party, if you like. You can call it a divorce march. But something that will grab the media attention, something they cannot possibly avoid, in order to make this known. As well as politicians, the media and the public, you've got to make this known to businesses, because businesses have fallen into the trap of supporting this whole rainbow acronym and not realising the significant difference that exists between the LGB and the TQA+. So it has to be communicated properly to the business sector as well. Now finally, as in any divorce, LGB has to consider what the TQA will be wanting as a part of the divorce settlement. They'll realise that they lose credibility, they lose any goodwill that the LGB has brought to the Rainbow Alliance. The TQA are very well funded. They're well funded from American billionaires, they're well funded from pharmaceutical companies who depend on them to peddle their puberty blockers and hormones. So they will be most upset. You will hear lots about, oh no, there's no divorce, there's no separation, everything's fine, everything's fine. But of course, as you've heard today, everything is not fine. The phrase that comes to mind is irreconcilable differences. Now, in divorce, that's really a no-fault divorce. It's no one's fault. There's just irreconcilable differences that did not exist 20 years ago, but they certainly exist now. Thank you so much for listening. Please share this episode. Please make a comment that will help the algorithm do its work. My name is Phil Dye. You've been listening to Filtered. I'll see you again soon.